Hi and welcome to this video on securing your home Wi-Fi network. I've worked in IT over the last 15 years or so and have been known for my security work over the last 5 of those. The media makes a big thing about network security in companies, but in this video I want to look at home networks. I'm not going to go into huge depth, but I am going to give 7 pieces of advice that I believe many home networks would benefit from. Okay, so let's start with the router. The router is the gateway between your network and the outside world, the internet. So it's really important to protect it with a strong password. After all, it contains the password to your Wi-Fi network and also gives people general control over what they can do within your network. It's really common for people to leave the default password in place, and I really would strongly advise against that. It's something that hacker will predict, and that could be everything from a password like the word admin or administrator to match the username, right the way through to a more complex one which matches the serial number of the device, which the hacker may have other ways of achieving that information. Other common password recommendations apply, so a common password in the world is password 1, used for all sorts of things, or people use family names, they use sports names, seasons, etc. So try not to use something that might be predictable and stick to good password advice, which personally I would recommend. I don't think this is the best password in the world, by the way, but use of a phrase of some variety. People will often use a song lyric or something or other else that means something to them and therefore is naturally memorable. My next recommendation is such a common one, I would hope this is familiar to everybody, to use WPA2 as your level of encryption. It would be remiss of me not to mention it, and therefore I have put it in this video. For anyone who's not aware, WEP and WPA, the first version of WPA, are now considered weak forms of encryption, so should not be used. And the recommendation is to go to WPA2, which is a much stronger form of encryption. The other thing I'd want to call out here is what's often called mixed mode or legacy mode, compatibility mode, or as simple as it shows in the screenshot, just WPA plus WPA2. This form of encryption basically allows for both WPA 1 and 2. It's often seen as a benefit for compatibility, but in reality devices very rarely need anything other than WPA2 these days, and leaving that mixed mode open simply opens you up to the risks of the original WPA1 encryption method. So I would strongly advise to move away from that if you use it and set your device so that it only uses WPA2 encryption. My third recommendation is to turn off WPS technology. This was a technology brought in for a convenience factor, really, so that you could press a button on the top of your router and create a fast connection effectively for a new device to join the network. I don't personally believe that many people use it heavily. You'd need to have a lot of new devices joining your network in order to make it worthwhile, and from a hacking perspective, it is the fastest way, the easiest way really into a network is to exploit WPS technology. So unless you have a really strong need for lots of new devices joining your network on a regular basis, I really strongly advise you turn this feature off. It's usually just a simple tick box, as you can see in the left-hand image, enable WPS. On some devices, like the one screenshotted on the right, it just talks about it as registering devices, so you'd have to determine that you did not want new devices to be able to just join your network. This next recommendation shouldn't apply to a lot of people, so remote management is a feature that's usually turned off by default. People turn it on usually to be able to potentially log into their router to tweak things while they're at work or at another site. It's rare that people really need and use that function, but there are occasions when people turn it on unnecessarily. Obviously it creates an exposure whereby a hacker in the outside world has then got an easier path to be able to brute force or break their way into your router password. So I strongly recommend that people make sure that feature is turned off in their router. And my next recommendation is simply to look after your devices. So bear in mind that any insecure device on your network puts any other device at risk. So maintain any antivirus software, any local firewall, and patch the operating system, even the firmware potentially, to the device. Don't forget that this applies to all devices that are on your network. So you may instantly think of a desktop PC, maybe a laptop and a tablet, but it will also apply to any mobile phone that connects, potentially a television, and these days even things like fridges and kettles can be purchased that can jump on a Wi-Fi network. The next couple of recommendations are not as critical, so I've marked them in the bottom right hand corner as such. The first of these is about obscuring your SSID. This is the name of your network in effect. A lot of people recommend hiding your SSID. I must admit I do it myself, but it provides a very weak form of protection. It's extremely easy to actually crack that. Whether or not you choose to hide your SSID, I would still say to think very carefully about what it says about identifying you. So use of your family name in it, the name of your property, or even just leaving it by default representing who your service provider is. All these pieces of information can help a hacker find a flaw in your network, or indeed find more information about yourself out to put together with internet traffic. So my recommendation would be to use something pretty neutral, maybe a random name from a dictionary, such that it means something to you but isn't obviously identifiable as yours. My last recommendation is to consider MAC filtering. This is basically a list of authorized devices that can connect to your network, and any device that is not on that list will not be able to connect even if it has the correct password to do so. If you don't tend to add new devices to your network on a regular basis, I would strongly advise using this feature just because of the protection it obviously offers, but it will depend on how often you introduce new devices and just how easy your particular router makes it for adding new devices to that MAC filter list. And that's the last of my recommendations. So I thought I'd just list here the key ones, the ones I marked as high importance. If any of these still apply to you, I'd strongly advise that you go and take a look at these now, just because of the level of protection that they offer. This is the first video I've done of this presentation type, so I'd be interested to hear whether this is useful for anybody. That's obviously the reason I put it up here, is to try and be helpful. But yeah, please leave some comments in terms of what works and what doesn't work, and I'll try to learn that for any future videos. I hope the video helped. Thanks for watching.